Welcome to Part 1 of the Building an Individualized Education Program IEP webinar series. This is a two-part webinar series for parents and professionals who are participating in the IEP planning process. Part 1 of the series, the Bricks and Mortar of the IEP Process, provides parents and professionals information relating to key IEP timelines, the qualification of individuals required to attend the IEP meeting, and building partnerships between team members. Part 2 of the series, Individualized Education Program IEP, the Blueprint, provides an overview of the purposes of the IEP planning process, including a description of the main components of a comprehensive IEP. The IEP webinars are part of a series of webinars for parents and educators that focus on the special education process implemented in North Dakota schools. The first of these webinars provided an overview of the top 10 basic steps of the special education process that are listed on this slide. This was followed by 2 webinars focusing on the special education evaluation process, steps 1 through 4. The IEP webinars complete the series with a discussion on the remaining steps which focus on the IEP process. A link to each of these webinars in the series, The Special Education Process in North Dakota, is located on the Pathfinder website. There are 2 main resources used in the development of this webinar. The first resource was the North Dakota Department of Public Instruction, ND-DPI, Office of Special Education Guidelines Individualized Education Program Planning Process. These guidelines were developed to assist educators who are developing IEPs for students with disabilities in North Dakota schools. The second resource was the Building the Legacy training curriculum, produced by NICHE, the National Dissemination Center for Children with Disabilities, and updated by the Center for Parent Information and Resources, CIPR. In addition to the Building the Legacy modules, CIPR has a wide variety of resources for parents of children with disabilities. Be sure and check out their website. As you have probably noticed by now, there is a construction theme throughout the IEP webinar series. In construction projects, a well-planned and comprehensive building blueprint provides a description of the foundation and the framework to build a distinctive and long-lasting structure. In the same way, a well-planned and comprehensive IEP provides the description of the foundation and the framework to build an individualized and appropriate educational program, which will assist in building a strong future for a student with a disability. As part of the building blueprint, the construction crew has the responsibility to provide a protection that will help maintain the building foundation and framework. For some buildings, this protection is made up of bricks and mortar. The same is true with the IEP planning process. The IEP team has the responsibility to assure that requirements are implemented to protect and maintain the IEP that is developed for a student with a disability. These requirements are part of the federal special education law, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA. Some of these requirements include IEP timelines, IEP meetings, scheduling, reviewing, and revising, meeting without a meeting, members of the IEP team, and excusing an IEP team member from attending the IEP meeting. When a student has been evaluated and identified as having a disability, the evaluation team may then recommend that a student proceed to the Individualized Education Program IEP planning process. There are several timelines that are part of the IEP process. These timelines include within 30 calendar days of determination that the student needs special education and related services, an IEP meeting must be conducted to develop the student's IEP. The IEP must be implemented as soon as possible following the IEP meeting. The IEP must be in effect at the beginning of the school year. An IEP meeting must be initiated and conducted at least once every 12 months. The IEP may be reviewed more frequently than once every 12 months if needed. Let's take a closer look at each of these timelines. A meeting to develop the initial IEP for a student must be conducted within 30 calendar days from the date of the meeting during which it was determined that the student has a disability. This determination will be noted in the Integrated Written Assessment Report, the IWAR, prepared by the evaluation team. The parents of the student will receive a copy of the Integrated Written Assessment Report with the documentation of determination of eligibility and the date of the meeting. An IEP must be implemented as soon as possible following the meeting at which the IEP was developed. As stated in the ND-DPI Guidelines Individualized Education Program Planning Process, exceptions to this are if, number 1, the meetings occur during the summer or a vacation period unless the child requires services during that time, or number 2, circumstances require a short delay, for example, arranging transportation. However, there can be no undue delay in providing special education and related services for the student. The same timelines are in place for a child who previously received early intervention services and is found eligible for early childhood special education services. If a child is found eligible for early childhood special education services, a meeting to develop the initial IEP must be conducted within 30 calendar days from the date of the meeting during which it was determined that the child has a disability. The development of an IEP for an eligible child turning 3 who has been receiving early intervention services is a responsibility of the local education agency. A complete description of the early childhood transition process is available in the North Dakota Department of Public Instruction and the North Dakota Department of Human Services Guideline Understanding Early Childhood Transition, a guide for families and professionals. Following the special education unit's policy and procedures, an IEP must be in effect for each eligible student at the beginning of each school year. IEP meetings may be conducted at any time during the school year. However, if the IEP meeting is held prior to the beginning of the school year, the team must ensure that the IEP contains the necessary, specially designed instruction and supplementary aids and services to ensure that the student's IEP can be appropriately implemented during the next school year. This is important when the student moves from one school building into another, such as from an elementary school into a middle school. It is important to note that the school district is responsible for determining when it is necessary to conduct an IEP meeting. An IEP meeting must be initiated and conducted at least once every 12 months. For example, if an initial IEP was developed on December 3rd, the subsequent IEP must be reviewed and revised no later than December 2nd of the following year. However, the IEP may be reviewed more frequently than once every 12 months, if needed. The parents of a child with a disability may request an IEP meeting at any time. For example, if the parents believe the child is not progressing satisfactorily or there is a problem with the current IEP, it would be appropriate for the parents to request an IEP meeting. If a student's teacher believes the services are not appropriate for the student, the teacher should follow the school's procedure with respect to either calling a meeting with the parents or requesting that the school district hold another IEP meeting to review the student's IEP. The IDEA regulations allow parents and the school district to agree to develop a written document to amend or modify the student's current IEP without conducting an IEP meeting. This option cannot be used with the IEP meeting that is required at least annually to review and revise the IEP. This option applies only to modifications a team might want to make after the annual IEP meeting has been held in person. Parents and the school district must agree to not meet but to take this approach instead. The amendment or modification must be in writing. It is important that personnel who are responsible for implementing the IEP are informed of these changes as it relates to their responsibilities. Copies of the revised IEP incorporating the amendments must be provided to the parents at their request. In addition to the required timelines regarding the IEP meetings, The school district must take steps to ensure that one or both of the parents of a child with a disability are present at the IEP meeting or are given the opportunity to participate. The school district must notify the parents early enough to ensure that they will have that opportunity to attend the IEP meeting. They must also schedule the IEP meeting at a mutually agreed upon time and place. As stated in the NDDPI guidelines, Individualized Education Program Planning Process, IDEA regulations state that if neither parent can be convinced to attend an IEP meeting, the school may conduct the meeting without them. However, the school must use other methods to ensure parent participation and consideration of their input, such as video conferencing and conference calls. School district policy and procedures should be followed regarding the type and number of contacts that must be attempted before determining that parent participation is not possible, as well as the documentation that is required regarding those contacts. A knowledgeable construction crew is needed to create a building by following the information provided on the building blueprint. Each crew member has a unique set of skills, and when they plan and work together, they can create and implement a successful blueprint. The same is true for the development of an IEP. It takes a team of uniquely skilled individuals to develop a well-planned and appropriate IEP for a student. Each person fulfills an important role by bringing and sharing critical information about the student and thoughtfully planning an effective educational program with other team members. The following individuals are considered key members of the IEP team: parents, representative of the local education agency LEA, regular education teacher, special education teacher or special education provider, an individual who can interpret the instructional implications of the evaluation results, and, although not a required member until transition age, the student can attend if appropriate. The parents of a child with a disability are equal and active participants with school personnel in developing, reviewing, and revising the IEP. It is critical to obtain input from parents so that the team will fully understand the scope of the student's needs. Parents provide valuable information about their child's abilities, interests, performance, and history. Not less than one special education service provider with knowledge of the student's needs must attend the IEP meeting. When the student has more than one disability, consideration should be given to including individuals with knowledge and training in each area of disability. Special education and related service providers bring expertise to the team regarding their specialized instruction, adaptations, and accommodations needed to help the student benefit from his or her education. They help the team focus on the system of necessary supports that will allow the student to participate in the general education curriculum as much as possible. Not less than one regular education teacher must be in attendance at the IEP meeting unless an appropriate excusal process has been followed. All regular education teachers currently involved or likely to be involved in their students' educational program must be notified of the IEP meeting and participate in discussions about how best to teach the student. Regular education teachers have expertise in educational standards, curriculum, and classroom environment. They share expectations specific to their classrooms, as well as methods, materials, and accommodations currently used. Additionally, they bring to the IEP team a rich understanding of typical child development and behavior. Regular educators enrich the IEP process by helping the team maintain age-appropriate expectations. Who should be the regular education teacher on the IEP team? Sometimes a student will have more than one regular education teacher. The regular education teacher serving on the IEP team should be the teacher who is or may be responsible for implementing a portion of the IEP. The school district will need to determine which teacher should be part of the IEP team. However, if the participation of more than one teacher would be beneficial to the student's success in school, it may be appropriate for those teachers to attend as participating members of the team. In a situation where not all of the student's teachers are IEP team members, The school district is strongly encouraged to seek input from all teachers who will not be attending the IEP meeting. A local education agency, LEA, representative must attend the IEP meeting or send a designee who is able to act on their behalf. Each school district may determine which staff member will serve as the school representative in a particular IEP meeting. It is important that the LEA representative have the authority to commit district resources and be able to ensure that whatever services are set out in the IEP will be provided. In addition, the administrative representative may serve as the team member who is knowledgeable about the general education curriculum. If the team is planning for a student who has been evaluated for the first time, evaluation personnel must also be in attendance. This may include a member of the team who evaluated the student, or an administrator, the student's teacher, or some other person who is knowledgeable about the evaluation procedures used with the student and is familiar with the results. This person must have experience in interpreting evaluation data for the suspected disability area. If more than one disability is determined, persons knowledgeable in each disability area should be included. The IEP team may, at the discretion of the parent or school district, include other individuals who have knowledge or special expertise regarding the student. Attendance at the IEP meetings should be limited to those who have a legitimate interest in the student. Who else should be included on the team? The student. Student attendance at IEP meetings is encouraged when appropriate. The student, parents, and other IEP team members should determine the contribution and duration of student participation during the meeting. Student invitation to the IEP meeting is required when the purpose of the meeting will be the consideration of the post-secondary goals of the student and the transition services needed to assist the student in reaching those goals. The student's preferences and interests must also be considered when designing and developing transition services. If the student does not attend the IEP meeting, the school must ensure that the student's preferences and interests are considered when the IEP is developed. Invitation and involvement of representatives from agencies responsible for providing or paying for transition services reflects an understanding that the school alone cannot plan for nor provide everything that a student may need as he or she moves from the school into the adult world. Interagency cooperation reinforces the coordination of services among agencies and provides a sense of shared responsibility to help the student make a successful transition and to reach their desired post-secondary goals. The IDEA regulations require that consent from the parent or the student who has reached the age of majority be obtained prior to inviting agency representatives. These agency representatives may include vocational rehabilitation, independent living centers, employment and training, mental health, developmental disabilities, college or university disability services, and others relevant to the individual needs and preferences of the student. Another transition time that may require an additional team member is for a child who was receiving early intervention services and is found eligible for early childhood special education services. In this scenario, an invitation to the initial IEP team meeting must, at the parent's request, be sent to the early intervention service provider to assist with the smooth transition of services. It is essential that school personnel on the IEP team participate in the development of the IEP for a student. If attendance of any required team member is not possible, the case manager must use alternate methods of ensuring the consideration of that person's input, including the IEP meeting excusal process if necessary. The IDEA regulations define two situations regarding excusal of a required IEP team member. The first situation involves a required IEP team member whose area is not being modified or discussed at the IEP meeting. This member is not required to attend an IEP team meeting in whole or in part if the parent of the child and the public agency agree in writing that the attendance of the member is not necessary. The second situation involves a required IEP member whose subject area is going to be discussed. In this scenario, the parent and the school district may consent in writing to excuse a required team member whose area of curriculum or related service is being modified or discussed at the meeting, if the member submits input in writing to the IEP team members before the meeting. The ND-DPI guidance document, Procedural Safeguards, Prior Written Notice, and Parental Consent Procedures, provides a description of the excusal process and a decision tree for completing the IEP excusal meeting form. In addition to assuring the IDEA requirements are implemented, the team must work together to create an IEP that is educationally appropriate and individualized for the student. It will take a partnership between all team members to have a successful and productive meeting. Pathfinder Services of North Dakota has several resources available to parents and professionals that provide guidance on building and maintaining strong partnerships. A link to these resources can be found on the Pathfinder website. The two publications shown on this slide were developed by CADRE, the Center for Appropriate Dispute Resolution for Special Education. The first one, Steps to Success, Communicating with Your Child's School, provides guidance to parents on specific communication skills that can assist in developing and maintaining a strong partnership with their child's school. The second document, Engaging Parents in Productive Partnerships, provides strategies to educators on developing relationships that assist in producing positive outcomes for students with disabilities. In addition to the CADRE documents, there are several checklists for parents and professionals that provide helpful tips for creating positive and productive partnerships. We have included a copy of a checklist for parents developed by the Pacer Center and a checklist for educators found in the ND-DPI Guidelines Individualized Education Program Planning Process. There are also organizations such as Understood and the Center for Parent Information and Resources, CIPR, that provide an assortment of publications relating to building partnerships and the IEP planning process. As you review these resources, several common communication skills are mentioned that, when practiced, can lead to a productive partnership between team members. Some of the communication skills include: be positive and respectful, be prepared, listen and acknowledge the importance of each team member's viewpoint, be patient with yourself and others, and always remember why the team is meeting: the student. Just as the construction crew has a responsibility to assure that they will provide a protection for the building foundation and framework using items such as bricks and mortar, the IEP team has a responsibility to assure that they will protect and maintain the Individualized Education Program planning process for each student with a disability. The IEP team must assure that the bricks and mortar, the IDEA requirements surrounding the IEP process, are in place. Part 1 of the IEP webinar series, The Bricks and Mortar of the IEP Process, has provided you information relating to several of these requirements. Join us for Part 2 of this series, the Individualized Education Program IEP The Blueprint, which provides an overview of the purposes of the IEP planning process, including a description of the main components of a comprehensive IEP. Thank you for viewing this webinar. If you have questions relating to this or other Pathfinder webinars, please contact us at the email address shown on this slide. In addition, we would appreciate your feedback by completing the survey that is available in the Additional Resource section.